The Spotlight, shining a light on podcasts and videos that have caught our attention.
Hi and welcome to The Spotlight. My name is Jen Spiker and today I'm highlighting part of a recent conversation that Phil Edwards had with his guest co-host on Sunday Morning Together. As the name suggests, Sunday Morning Together is heard every Sunday on Vision and available on demand in the Vision app. Each week, Phil spends time unpacking his guests' stories, including their faith journey. For those unable to attend a local church service, the program includes a time of communion and a 5-minute sermon. A recent guest co-host on Sunday Morning Together was Pastor Brad Peterson, who is known as the Shearing Pastor.
The Spotlight with Jen Spiker.
We're going to find out who this Brad Peterson is right now. He's known as the Shearing Pastor, so maybe we start at the beginning, Brad. Where were you born?
Yeah, thanks, Phil. So born in a little town called Cunnanoppin, but raised right next to that in Muckenbudin.
Okay.
So Muckenbudin, about 300 kilometres east of Perth in the central wheat belt of Western Australia.
Cunnanoppin and Muckenbudin, great names. Great names. I've been to Mucka. It is only a very, very small town. Everybody knows everybody. What kind of circumstance were you born into there? Was big family, or what was the story?
Yeah, well, my great-grandpa was one of the first pioneer settlers there on my mum's side, so the main street's named after him, Shadbolt Street. As you say, related to everybody. Got to be careful finding family reunions, Got to try and find a girlfriend from the outside. Very small town. But my dad was a shearing contractor, still is to this day, over 50 years shearing contracting.
Wow.
In Muckenbudin.
Wow, he must have a pretty good back doing shearing for 50 years.
Yeah, he's done very well and still going and can still pump out a few sheep every day. So, he's doing well and still contracting out there.
Oh, that's fantastic. Brothers and sisters?
Yes, I've got an older brother, 18 months older than me, and I've got a younger sister, a bit younger, and a younger brother as well. So I'm sort of the one of the middle children, 4 children. So not a big family, but big enough. And,
Was there any faith exposure in your family growing up?
Yeah, well, around the time I was born, so around 43 years ago, my mum and dad actually became Christians from no Christian background, first-generation Christians, when a little mini revival swept through Mucka, actually, and quite a few families that had come from no faith at all had come to know Jesus and was quite transformational. So then we grew up going to the little Muckenbudin Church of Christ, and on Sunday nights we'd always go home and run our own little church service for mum and dad when we were kids, and our cousins would come around and I'd be the preacher and someone else would be the song leader. And yeah.
That's amazing. I wasn't aware of that. You know what the genesis was of that mini revival you talked about?
Well, I'm not exactly sure. My mum talks about a few different things around then. There was definitely a yearning and a hunger from people in her friend influence or friend sphere there that were really yearning for more. And John Barlow was a preacher of the gospel at the time, and he preached a very strong gospel message, and a lot of people came to faith and got baptised under his strong gospel ministry. So, yeah.
That's really interesting. So, small town, not a lot of opportunity there. You're growing up. A lot of people go away to boarding school. Was that your experience?
Yeah, that was too, absolutely. So 300-kilometre trek to boarding school, and we boarded it.
Off to Perth?
Off to Perth, yep. And I ended up doing a cricket scholarship at Kent Street Cricket School.
Right.
So, yeah, it was right into cricket. My family, we were a big cricket family. Everyone loved cricket, well, except for my sister. Everyone loved cricket. But
Batsman or bowler?
Tried to be a batsman.
Try to be a batsman and you're a better bowler, or you just...
No. Better batsman than a bowler. But I loved cricket, and I played a little bit of A grade, not very much. I was in an A grade squad in Perth, but my brother was more the successful cricketer than me, so he did very well.
Good stuff. So you're at boarding school. It's a transformative time in your life in the teenage years. You're separated from your parents. How did that affect you? Because for some, they thrive, and for others, they get lost. What was your experience?
Yeah, for me, I had a strong faith after coming to the Lord as a 10-year-old. So I knew Jesus. I had a relationship with God. But, going to boarding school, the pressures, the peer pressures, I became what you call a secret agent Christian. Nobody knew but me.
Yep.
So just started to wander off, drift away, and as you do, become a product of your environment. And, God sort of gets put on the shelf, and all the other things start to come in, and started to really do my own thing in life, which didn't turn out too good.
So what happened?
Yeah, so after leaving boarding school, and then I started to do a business course in Perth, and again, just living my own way and all the things of the world, and ended up crashing my car, getting into not a great relationship, and then from there lost my license and had nowhere to go. So my old man said, "Well, you got to come home while you haven't got a license," and that's when I learnt to shear sheep, believe it or not. And so that's how I learnt to shear. I didn't have a choice, had to quit the business course, and never looked back from shearing. Once I started to shear sheep and make some good money, it was like, well, this is what I'll do from now on. And around that time, I also that's when I had a recommitment. I'd say a radical encounter and recommitment with God, where I just come to the end of myself, Phil, and was totally just sort of had sucked everything I could out of life, and was like, there's got to be more to this. It's got to be more than just all the pleasures of this life. I'm feeling empty. And I remember walking through Perth, and Steve Grace, who's a gospel singer, you know Steve Grace, he was actually playing in an outdoor concert, and he sung this song that said, "I want to be someone someday. I don't want to throw my life away. I'm trying to do the best I can to have the faith of Abraham." And as he sung that song, I just started to weep. And it was at that concert I gave my heart back to Jesus, and really committed my life back to him to say, "Lord, I want to put you first, and I want to follow you. And please forgive me of all my sin. I'm coming back." And everything really turned around from that moment then.
I'm curious, that phrase, a radical encounter with God, that you just used. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because it can just sound so Christianese at times. But what I mean by that is God became more than a concept, a theory, a Bible verse, a belief. And for me, growing up, I hadn't heard about the power of God's Holy Spirit to come and fill my life and give me power over sin, over weaknesses, and power to really be strong and bold for him. And so I went along to this church in Perth that was a pretty large church, and I didn't know anyone. And I'd heard the Steve Grace thing. I'd give my life back to God. And they started talking about, hey, if you've never had the Holy Spirit come and fill your life, if you've never had that happen, then you need that now. It's the power for living. And I discovered Acts 1 verse 8, which says, "But you'll receive power when the Holy Spirit comes upon you, and you will be my witnesses in the whole world." And I just thought everyone at this meeting, 500 people, would be at the front of that church wanting what they were offering. And I ran down there. I was the first one there, and I looked around, and I was the only one there. And I was like, don't these guys realize what these guys are saying? If Jesus can be this powerful in my life, if the Holy Spirit can make this difference in me, I want it now. And so the pastor came and put his hand on my shoulder and just prayed for me that I would receive the Holy Spirit. And, nothing weird happened at all. I just had this incredible sense on the inside of me that I was filled with God himself. And things just started to shift from there. I had this power to witness. I remember going to my footy club, and we'd play on Sundays, and I would often go to the pub after footy on the Sunday, and I was one of the captains of the club. And this one Sunday, I'd had this turnaround in my life, and they said, "You come in the pub?" And I said, "No, I'm actually going to church."
And they probably looked at you funny.
Well, actually, it was a funny story, Phil. They looked back and said, "Oh, church, yeah," because there was a nightclub in Perth called The Church. And they thought that's where I was heading. And I said, "No, I'm going to a church. I'm going to worship God." And they thought, "Oh, it's crazy." Anyway, I'm walking out the gate, and our full forward at the time, once everyone had gone, had ran out and caught me and said, "Brad," he said, when no one's looking, he said, "Can I come to church with you tonight?" And he ended up coming along to that church service, and at the end of that service, he came back to the Lord, recommitted his life. I never knew he was a Christian. He then went into 10 years later. I caught up on Facebook. He's a pastor. But yeah, when I say radical encounter, it is that God doesn't want you just to have pie in the sky when you die. He wants the power of heaven on earth now in my life, and that gives you reason to get up out of bed every morning and know that there's a purpose for your life.
Yeah. So were you shearing at this time?
No, that was before I'd gone back shearing. There's a bit of in between time there, but wasn't soon after that. I went back shearing. Yeah.
Yeah. What else did you see happen in your life and around you in the lives of others as a result of that transformation?
Yeah, I think the thing you see in yourself is that, like I said, that there's a sense of new purpose birthed on the inside of you. But around others, like I remember going into the pub where I'd play darts on a Friday night when I was going back shearing, and I look up on the dartboard, and normally they put your name on the board, like B for Brad, but they put the letter R up this night for Brad. And I was like, hey, who's R? They said, oh, that's for you, Reverend. And, I wasn't a pastor. I wasn't a minister. I was just sheep shearing, but they had seen that this guy's changed. He's not getting drunk as a skunk anymore. And he's actually got something different about his life. And I remember one of the friends there looked into my eyes and said, what happened to you? What's different? And I said, well, let me tell you, his name's Jesus. Yeah.
So good. Now, Brad, you've been knocking around shearing sheds for a long time, from a young bloke, and even still today as a pastor. And hats off to you too for not just being, behind the pulpit, stuck in the church. You're out there kind of knocking around with the real world, so to speak. What have shearing sheds taught you, and what opportunity have they given you in faith?
Yeah, absolutely. Shearing sheds are the best Bible college I've ever been to. God really spoke into my heart when I had that radical encounter, that recommitment to God, and I was back out in the shearing shed, and I had this dream in my heart of preaching, being a preacher, preaching the gospel. And God clearly said to me in my heart, he said, if you can't live for me here in this shed with these people right now, you won't do it anywhere else. It's like he was saying, a missionary isn't someone who crosses the sea. It's someone who's seen the cross, and it's impacted them that much. They'll cross the street. And so for me, I just knew God makes a difference with who you are, where you are, what you have. And so in the shearing sheds, I remember I said to the boys around that time, hey, I'm preaching my first ever sermon at church. You guys should come along. And they were pretty intrigued, and the guy shaking hands at the little church at Muckamboodin there had done that for 20 years or something. He just about fell over when he saw all these tattooed shearers walking in to come and listen to the sermon. But yeah, I just think it's the opportunity, being in the real world with real people. And there's something about just a hard day's work, and something very Aussie about that, I reckon, too.
On the Spotlight, we've been listening to part of a conversation between Vision's CEO, Phil Edwards, and Pastor Brad Peterson from a recent Sunday morning together. I'll share more of this fascinating conversation next time, but if you can't wait, you can hear the full story, plus Pastor Brad's communion message and 5-minute sermon by tapping the podcast tab of the Vision app. Just search for Sunday Morning Together to find this and many more episodes. My name is Jen Spiker. Join me next time on The Spotlight as we hear Pastor Brad Peterson share how his life changed suddenly when his son was diagnosed with an extremely rare disease.
For more great podcasts and videos like the one featured today, check out vision.org.au or the free Vision app.